Good afternoon. My name is Matt Beitcher. I'm a lead meteorologist at the National Weather Service office in St. Louis and a member of the AMS Board for Operational Government Meteorologists. I want to welcome everybody to our May 2024 webinar, part of our webinar series from BOGM. And we are very excited to be joined by Jennifer Stroozas, who is the Warning Coordination Meteorologist for the National Weather Service's Aviation Weather Center in Kansas City, Missouri. And she's going to be giving us a presentation not only on the AWC and what they do and the wide scope that they have across not only the United States, but across portions of the globe, but her own journey through the Weather Service, outside of the Weather Service, back into the Weather Service. It's quite a unique journey, and I'm very happy that she was available and willing to share that with us. So without further ado, Jennifer, the floor is yours. Take it away.
All right, thank you so much for teeing that up so nicely. Again, my name is Jennifer Stroozas. I'm the Warning Coordination Meteorologist here at the Aviation Weather Center. We're located in Kansas City, Missouri. I put our little motto up here, which you've come with, our mantra. We're here to inform flight with weather wisdom. So to start out here today, I just want to give a little background about the Aviation Weather Center, what we do, what type of information we provide, and the whole reason why we exist. So here I have a graphic that shows the causes of national airspace system delays. And as much as 67% of the delays in the national airspace system can be attributed to weather and has a huge economic impact of roughly $23 billion annually from a study that was done in 2020. So you can see what some of the other delays are, but in the light blue is the weather. It takes up the majority of the air traffic issues across the national airspace. So that is partially why we exist. As we all know, the mission of the National Weather Service is not only to protect lives and property, which is a big part of what we do, but it's also to enhance the national economy. So we do have a very large hand in that at the Aviation Weather Center. A hill I will die on is that we at the National Weather Service's Aviation Weather Center, what we do day to day has a larger economic impact than any other program in the National Weather Service. When you take into account all the airline decisions that are being made and all the collaboration with the FAA to make sure that we are able to keep the airspace open and moving. So this is a picture of our building. Again, we're located in Kansas City, Missouri. We're not too far from the airport, although we're not super visible from the main thoroughfare in and out. We're sort of tucked away in the woods. But this is a snapshot of where we live, if you will. We are in a NOAA facility, and we do actually share space with a couple of other weather service entities. So when you're looking at this picture on the right-hand side, the Aviation Weather Center is on that front right side. It's also fun to see all the satellite dishes there on the right side where we collect and send all of our data. Also in this building is our National Weather Service Training Center. Some of you, if you're in the Weather Service, have probably been here for a course or two. So they're located on the left side of this picture. And then on the back left side of the picture is the National Weather Service's Central Region headquarters. And then also in the building is the National Weather Service Proving Ground. So we're all share the same building space. It's a great facility. So if you're ever here for a course, please reach out to me. I'd love to give you a tour through our operations area as well. We love having visitors and let them get a peek into what we do every day. So this is a picture of our operations area in case you aren't ever able to make it here in person. And I usually like to, especially those that aren't familiar with the weather offices, get feedback from people on what they think, what they observe. And usually the first thing that people say is, wow, that's a lot of monitors. And yes, we do have a lot of monitors. We, like most meteorologists, love our data here. We also run two different systems to do our forecasting. We have the same AWIP system that is found in weather forecast offices, but since we're a national center, our primary source of doing our data collection, analysis, and sending our products is NAWIPS, or the National AWIP system. So we are running them side by side, and so we have an extra set of monitors by default, if you will. But yes, like all meteorologists, we like our situational awareness displays and being able to look at our data. So again, informing flight with weather wisdoms. That's a little mantra that you can take away with you as well. If you're not familiar with the National Weather Service or how we're laid out, I thought I would just do a really brief overview of how we fall into the federal government system. So we are part of the U.S. government. We're under the executive branch of the U.S. government. Usually when I go out to school children, I ask them about the three branches of government, but you all should hopefully be familiar with that. We fall under the Department of Commerce. Again, since part of our mission is to enhance the economy, that's why sometimes I get questions about why commerce. But that is partially why we are into that department. And then we are part of NOAA as the National Weather Service. National Weather Service as a whole has one national headquarters, 6 regional headquarters, 122 local weather forecast offices. We have a slew of river forecast centers and a national water center as well. So we do have a water mission as well. And then we have 21 center weather service units. If you aren't familiar with that group, we have a small cadre of weather service employees who are embedded with our FAA partners and air route traffic control centers across the country, and they're called Center Weather Service Units. They're providing weather information to FAA air traffic controllers and decision makers. And then we have 9 national centers. So I'll give you a little brief history of aviation weather forecasting and why we exist in the first place. So it all started in 1961. The U.S. Air Force Air Weather Service issued the first official forecast for clear air turbulence. Now, if you think about it, 1961, it was a while ago, but it really isn't that long ago. That's one of the things that I love about meteorology. That's a relatively young science compared to some of the other sciences that exist. And then in 1977 was the big event for us. There was a crash of Southern Airlines 242 in New Hope, Georgia, and unfortunately, it did have fatalities. So this was a situation where the crew was going out east first to drop off passengers, and in the moment after they passed and landed and let their passengers off, turned around and came back, a line of storms developed. And they weren't aware that that was supposed to happen, and they flew back through those thunderstorms, and unfortunately, ran into trouble, and the aircraft crashed, and there were 72 fatalities. So upon that event, the NTSB did an investigation and recommended that they needed to have procedures for timely dissemination of all available severe weather information for controllers so that they could help guide those airplanes and the pilots through any bad weather. So then in 1978, the convective SIGMET unit was established. That's a product we'll get to here in a moment. It's basically our version of a thunderstorm warning in aviation world. It was established within the National Severe Storms Forecast Center, and Weather Service meteorologists were established in those 13 air route traffic control centers. Those are the CWSU meteorologists. That happened in 1978. So that also was the birth of Center Weather Service units. Then in 1981, we had those weather service meteorologists throughout all 21 of the air route traffic control centers, and that partnership does continue today. It's a very important partnership, especially if you go into one of those centers and you see the relationship that they have and the communication that goes on. It's a really neat program. And then in 1982, the National Aviation Weather Advisory Unit, I don't know how you would say that, the NAWU, was formed, and eventually it was renamed to the Aviation Weather Center in 1995. Okay, so more about the Aviation Weather Center. We have 4 branches here at the AWC, most of which are located here in Kansas City, Missouri. So our operations branches are our domestic operations branch and our international operations branch. I'm guessing you can all kind of figure out what the difference between those two are. That we focus on domestic operations on one, and the other one is our international forecasting, our international desks. Then lastly, here in Kansas City, we have our aviation support branch, and they are a very vital component to what we do here. This is really our research to operations side and also our tech side. And we do a lot of research to operations here, and we run aviation weather test beds. I'll touch on that a little bit farther into this talk. And then the last branch of AWC is a group that we call our National Aviation Meteorologists. They aren't located here in Kansas City, but they are part of the Aviation Weather Center. They're located with our FAA partners in Warrenton, Virginia at the FAA's Command Center. So the FAA Command Center is where air route traffic decisions are made. So if you are flying on a thunderstorm day and your plane takes a delay because it has to take a different route, those decisions are being coordinated at the Command Center. I like to consider them as almost a national center weather service unit. So they're collaborating with those center weather service units. Our FAA partners are collaborating with air route traffic control centers to figure out where they may need to move traffic and what sort of playbooks they need to put in, and if there are any type of ground delay programs that need to put into place because of weather. Those decisions are made at the air route or at the command center. And so we have a specialized unit of aviation meteorologists who are there to provide that type of information for them and for impact decision support right there at the command center. So in total, we have the 4 branches, 2 different locations. We have about 80 total employees, which includes not only our forecasters, I mentioned operational forecasters, we're at about 40. We also have researchers, developers, a lot of IT support, amazing administrative support. We have our group of managers and supervisors. And then another really neat, unique thing that we have going here is we have a NOAA Corps officer that comes and does a temporary assignment with us as well. Unfortunately, that is currently vacant, which we hope to have filled later on this summer or into the fall. But it's a great benefit. We get a NOAA Corps officer who is still an active pilot. So when they're not out chasing hurricanes or doing other science missions, we have them here in the office and can get their input from a pilot's perspective on any products that we're issuing, or if we just need any insight from a pilot's perspective. It's a great little benefit that we have. So jumping in a little bit more to our operations side. So we'll start off with our domestic operations branch. So we do have 24-hour days, 7 days a week, 365 days coverage, just like your weather forecast offices. And these desks that are a part of the domestic operations branch focus on aviation specific hazards. So we have our ceiling and visibility desk, a turbulence desk, icing desk, and convective SIGMET desk. And again, convective SIGMET is just our version of a warning for thunderstorms that's specific for pilots. So that's one mindset that sometimes has to be a little bit different. As meteorologists, we're used to pretty certain thresholds for thunderstorms, what it means to actually be severe as far as wind threshold and hail threshold. In our world, for pilots in aviation, any thunderstorm is a hazard. So when we do our convective SIGMETs, it's for any thunderstorm activity, and actually it doesn't even have to have lightning. If it's just a significant enough convection, we have to get a warning out so that we are alerting pilots and air traffic controllers that it's an area to avoid. Our other part, a desk of the domestic operations branch, is a seasonal desk. It runs from March through October, and it's our traffic flow management convective forecast. We call it the TCF forecast because we love acronyms, especially acronyms that are within an acronym, so it's bonus points for us. But anyway, this is a specific thunderstorm forecast that we produce that not only shows where the thunderstorms are going to be, but also the type of coverage it's going to be, so that our air traffic planners can get an idea if they're going to be able to get around thunderstorms or if it's going to be bad enough that they have to start moving airplanes away from them completely and come up with different routes and different plans. The other unique thing about this forecast and a lot of our other thunderstorm forecasts is that it just doesn't tell you where the thunderstorms are spatially, but also what the height is. So thunderstorm tops are very important, and that's included in our TCF forecast and our other convective SIGMET forecast. Especially as we're on the cusp seasons, if you will, early season, late season, when thunderstorms can be a little lower in the atmosphere, it may be possible for air traffic to keep flowing over the top of any weather. However, when we get into the summertime and thunderstorms are up to 45, 50,000 feet, they definitely have to go around them. But that's a little extra piece of information that we are including in our forecast for our partners. So the other really unique and really cool thing about the Aviation Weather Center is we have a pretty large international responsibility. And that's not just for us as a national center. It includes our other national centers like the Storm Prediction Center and the National Hurricane Center, Space Weather Center. We all have some sort of international component to what we do. So internationally here, we run 3 different international desks. We have two desks that work 2 shifts a day for our global graphics. We call it our significant weather, producing charts that show things like where turbulence areas and the jet streams will be on a global scale. And that really helps the international flying community decide where they want to fly. If they want to take advantage of a jet stream or if they want to avoid a jet stream, it can help them in those type of planning situations. And then we also do forecasts for the Caribbean and Gulf of Mexico, and also some international SIGMETs for any bad weather that needs to get alerted into the international waters. So again, it's something that we carry quite proudly here. There are a lot of countries that would love to have the distinction of being able to provide these global graphics. It's not only us, but there's 2 offices. The other one is in Exeter, England, as a part of the UK Met Office. So we each have the official jurisdiction, if you will, through an organization called ICAO, the International Civil Aviation Organization, which is actually a part of NATO. So it's an agreement there that we have that authority to provide global aviation forecasts, and we can back each other up. So if one of us goes down, the other can take over that responsibility. Okay, we'll dive in a little bit more in detail into the different products and services that we provide. And if you haven't been to our lovely website, aviationweather.gov, I encourage you to go check it out. Although our primary mission is for aviation information, we do have all sorts of weather information. We just redid our website last October, which we'll get to, that I'm finding a lot of people find very helpful for just general weather situational awareness information. So we'll start with our aviation weather advisories and warnings that we provide. So we produce what we call graphical aeromets, and these are advisory level products for hazardous weather in our domestic airspace. They're issued routinely 4 times a day. You can see the times here that we issue them, and they're snapshots, if you will, of the weather every 3 hours out to 12 hours. And we do that for, again, different aviation hazards. So we go by hazard. We have our ceiling and visibility desk, which focuses on IFR ceilings and or visibility, as well as mountain obscuration. Mountains and airplanes aren't a good mix either. So we include that in any of our advisory level information. We also have our turbulence desk, which focuses on areas of moderate or greater turbulence, strong surface winds, and low level wind shear, all of which are hazards to our aviation friends, especially the general aviation community. When you're flying in a smaller airplane, it can be more susceptible to those turbulence events. So it's particularly important for them. And then we also run an icing desk where we are expecting moderate or greater icing. And we also produce a freezing level forecast. And that's very valuable information as well, especially if a pilot finds themselves stuck in icing situation. The freezing level will help them decide how they might be able to get out of that situation, if they need to fly below the freezing level, or if they sometimes flying above it when we have an inversion type of situation will also help. So we are able to provide that forecast information for our partners. And then we have our aviation weather advisories and warnings. We'll go to the warnings here. So we issue what our version of a warning is called a SIGMET, or a Significant Meteorological Information Statement. So SIGMET's the aviation warning of the aviation world. We do that for ceiling and visibility as well. And it also includes not only just for things like blowing dust and low visibility, but also volcanic ash. Volcanic ash is a big deal for airplanes. We don't see it very often, thankfully. Our friends in Alaska see it more frequently than we do. But when you get ash mixed in with aircraft engines, that very fine silt can create a lot of problems with engines. So it's important that we get that warning information out as soon as possible. And then for our turbulence desk, we produce SIGMETs for severe turbulence to make sure that our partners are aware of where those conditions are occurring, so they can either go around it or try to avoid it. And again, like our thunderstorms, we try to get as precise in that layer of where we're expecting that turbulence. So if it's at a certain level, they may be able to fly over it or fly under it safely. So we get pretty specific in our forecast. It's not just for a point. We are forecasting for the entire scope of the atmosphere. And then lastly, we have our icing desk, and we produce our version of a warning, the icing SIGMETs, when we are expecting severe icing conditions. Icing and airplanes are also a very bad mix, so it's important that we get that information out as soon as possible. And again, we're trying to be pretty specific with that layer that we can expect those icing conditions in. And then lastly, for convection specifically, we have our convective SIGMETs. Those are valid for 2 hours and are issued at the top of every hour. and for at least for our domestic airspace. So we are again trying to alert pilots and air traffic controllers where those thunderstorms are, what the tops are, and what the movement of those storms are, so they can get an idea of how to route airplanes around or how they're talking to pilots. And then also just the general aviation community will also use that information to try to make sure that they are avoiding the hazard altogether. And then on the international side, we have our tropical cyclone SIGMETs, and those are valid for 6 hours, and they're issued in conjunction with the tropical cyclone advisories, TC advisories, over the international waters and where the US has SIGMET responsibility internationally. So for the International SIGMET desk, it's thunderstorms, tropical cyclones, severe turbulence, severe icing, and volcanic ash. It's all handled by our International SIGMET desk. So what I'm saying is we cover a lot of area. So this little map shows the entire responsibility of the Aviation Weather Center. This doesn't include the routine global graphics. That's the whole northern and southern hemisphere as well. This is sort of our main area of focus here at AWC. So we cover a lot of ground. We are very busy. We do not have an off season. In the wintertime, it's all about icing and turbulence. And now we have transitioned to thunderstorm season, and it's all about thunderstorms. So it's very busy here. There's not much downtime. And we also make sure that our meteorologists are trained on multiple desks, as I mentioned, all those different desks that can rotate around, not only just to have variety and for ease of scheduling, but so you don't get too burned out. If you're working the turbulence desk all the time in the winter, when it's really, really busy with turbulence, it can be a rough stretch. So we want to make sure that we have a varied and a variety available for our meteorologists. We also have two other offices that are very similar to the Aviation Weather Center. They're what we call our World Meteorological Offices, or WMO offices. One is in Alaska, and it's called the Alaska Aviation Weather Unit, or the AWU. And then we have a similar office in Honolulu, which covers a lot of the Pacific, that is run out of the Honolulu Forecast Office. So we sort of have three main aviation centers for the US that cover portions of the US. It's not just the AWC. And we collaborate very closely with one another, especially along our borders and just aviation issues in general. Okay, when it comes to routine non-advisory forecasts, this is what comes from our international desk. So we produce 3 routine forecasts for the low levels of the atmosphere, the mid-level, and the high level. And those heights are listed in the description here. But again, it covers such things as jet stream location, turbulence location, any type of aviation hazards that our international partners need to be aware of and may need to avoid. Or again, sometimes it's take advantage of, because if you can catch a really strong jet stream going across international waters, it's going to save you time and money because you will use less fuel. And vice versa, if you have to fly into the jet stream, that could create some issues, slow you down, cost you some more money. So they're going to try to do their best to avoid that coming back the other way. And then again, for our tropical desk, we do a forecast for the Gulf and for the Caribbean. It's kind of like an aerial TAF, if you will. It's a summary of the aviation weather conditions outlined here in the red that will give you aviation hazard specifics. Here's a little more on the TCF forecast that I had mentioned earlier. Again, this is the seasonal one that runs from March through October. It's a 4, 6, and 8-hour forecast. I apologize about that. I need to correct that in my slides. 4, 6, and 8-hour forecast. And it is used very heavily by the FAA, especially FAA traffic management unit planners. So they're looking at this forecast to try to see if they need to move airplanes around or put what we call playbooks into place. If there's a big line of thunderstorms through the central part of the country, they know they're not going to be able to fly a whole lot of airplanes or through it. So they're going to start looking at routing traffic to the north of it and to the south of it. And it's a little bit of a balancing act sometimes because that means those other centers, air traffic controllers, are going to have to take some of the extra traffic. So that's why up at the command center, they're leading these discussions and these decisions and trying to figure out where to put air traffic so that they can balance everything out and keep the national airspace moving as best that they can. But here's a snapshot of what one of those forecasts look like. So you can see the areas drawn in blue that show where some of that convection is. And then you'll notice the numbers on there as well. So again, like I mentioned, that's where we're trying to show the thunderstorm top height, to give them an indication of how large a scale those thunderstorms are going to be, and if they're low enough in the atmosphere, if they're going to be able to keep air traffic moving, or if they need to definitely start going around. So all of that translates to it costing a whole lot of money and time. So here's a couple of cases that I have on the right-hand side here from 2015 that just can show how much thunderstorms and weather can disrupt the air traffic system. So the one on the left is showing estimated that was about a $74 loss per minute with the routes that were affected. There were blocked routes, and then also some impacts at the terminals. And then on the right-hand side, probably the thing that they try to avoid most in the airline industry is diversions. Diversions are very, very costly, and this event unfortunately did create some diversions. It's where you end up with airplanes going to places they're not supposed to be. So that the types of losses are listed on the right-hand side. So you can have crews that will time out. You have people who are missing connections, are missing maybe a conference. So those costs can add up pretty quickly, and they are a very big deal and something that the airline industry really, really tries to avoid. Okay, so I wanted to mention a little bit more about our Aviation Weather Center support branch, our ASB branch here in Kansas City that focuses on research to operations and development. So not only is this group here looking at our products and services, they're supplying information and a lot of data to our website. They're also doing our website design. We've done all of our website design and dissemination here in-house. We're pretty proud of that fact. We have an amazing team of IT folks and designers who have done an excellent job and are able to focus on that. We do a whole lot of IT architecture, IT security. We do a lot of data management, a lot of data flow, and we help support other centers as well. And then on the science and technology side, we run an aviation weather test bed. So a couple of times a year, we will host an experiment where we'll bring in not only meteorologists who are producing forecasts, but also some of our end users. And that's to get an idea that of our research or new product before it goes into operations is going to be successful. So we're having meteorologists in our most recent experiment, they were looking at the new Rufus model that's going to be coming out and doing an evaluation of how well it's performing and if it will be ready for rollout into operations. We'll also try new techniques. If we want to try to do a new product, we'll bring in a group of meteorologists who can give input on what that should look like. And then our users will also be there to do an analysis if it's something that they find useful or understandable. We work pretty closely with an FAA human factors group. They're called the AUDI group, Aviation Weather Evaluation Demonstration Team. And they are social scientists that will come shadow our test bed and give us that human factor social science side as well, even down to things like, are we looking at the right color scheme? Is this going to be understandable to people? So it's a great partnership that we have. We've been really lucky to have that established for a long time. Anyway, so we do a lot of research research operations as well. We work closely with our FAA partners on research for turbulence and icing, whether it's evaluating new models or putting in new research into operations. Okay, I already mentioned aviationweather.gov. If you haven't been there yet, I highly recommend you just go type that in right now. We did roll out an upgraded website on October 16th. And it had a whole slew of upgrades. Our old website was designed a long time ago, long before these existed, cell phones. So it was not mobile friendly. And that was one of the biggest pieces of feedback we would get on our website. Hey, your website has a lot of information, but I can't use it on my mobile device. And it wasn't. You would try to pull up something and it would be too small to read. It was pretty terrible. So that was probably the main motivation behind the start of our upgrade, was to make it mobile friendly and to make the streamline the menus and make it a little easier to navigate. And so that is what we rolled out. This is a snapshot of what the main page looks like. Not today, it's not current, but if you go there, I just wanted to give you an idea that it's how adaptable it is. So it depends. It's smart enough that it knows what type of device you're on, whether you're on a PC or if you're on a cell phone or if you're on an iPad, and it will adjust your screen to the correct size. So on the left-hand side is like what it would look like on a desktop, and then on the right-hand side is an example of what it might look on a cell phone. So the menus have been simplified. It's really great to get around. As someone who travels frequently myself, I love using it to get weather information about where I'm going. It's really easy to point and click on a cell phone and pull up whether there's a SIGMET. You want to read what's going on and hoping you're not flying through it. Um, it's a great place to get information. Not only that, but if you go to our graphical forecast display, which is on the upper right-hand corner here, if you click on the GFA forecast, you can get a really nice display of current weather observations. So I've been getting a lot of feedback that a lot of meteorologists have been using that to get an idea of what weather conditions are currently. Okay, so that's the end of my AWC spiel. And I thought I'd go in a little bit about just meteorology as a career and kind of my wild journey through weather and the Weather Service, since I tend to get some of those questions and curiosities. And most importantly, once I finish this part, I really am hoping that we'll have some questions and maybe a little bit of discussion. So, how the heck did I get into meteorology anyway? I think when I talk to a lot of meteorologists, we have a pretty similar story. There's one event or one thing that really got you interested in weather. And for me, that was when I was about probably 5 or 6 years old. I grew up in central Wisconsin, and I remember very well a tornado warning and the tornado sirens going off, and my family going to the basement underneath the stairwell where we were supposed to go. Looking back on it, I'm like, my family had their stuff together. We knew what to do. Um, and I was both like fascinated and terrified at the same time. And it always stuck in my head that the weather was really, really interesting. What just happened? And then as I got older, and well, I'm gonna date myself now that as cable was kind of new, and there's this new thing called the Weather Channel, and once we finally did get cable and had the Weather Channel, it looked like this that's on the screen with a blue screen. It would have your basic forecast. I found that I had it on the TV all the time. My mom and I were always watching the Weather Channel. So, like a lot of people, it starts at a young age. I currently have a 10-year-old, and I'm starting to see the weather gene in him as well. He's very interested in thunderstorms, and in fact, I have radar scope on his iPad, and he has been showing me the radar way too often lately. So, he may be destined to be a meteorologist as well. But anyway, so then when I was in 8th grade, I had an earth science class. And my teacher for that class, his name was Mr. Jorgensen. I still remember him very well. He did a unit on weather. So we got to learn the very basics of weather, draw our millibars, draw the highs, draw the lows, draw some fronts. And I always thought that was really fun and really fascinating. In fact, I remember getting made fun of in that class by one of my classmates, being like, "Oh, of course you would like weather, the nerd word, right?" And I was like, "Yeah, I do. This is really cool." So when it came time for me to try to figure out what I wanted to be when I grew up, um, I always had this lingering in my mind that this weather stuff is really interesting. This is really fascinating. Tornadoes really, really fascinate me. I want to learn more about this. Fun fact, if I wasn't a meteorologist, I would have been a music major because that was my other thing. I played the saxophone when I was in all throughout school. I thought maybe I was destined to be a music major, but I figured that I would probably want to go into a career in weather instead. So that's what I did. For those of you not in the Weather Service or in the federal government, I just thought I'd throw up the basics of the GS 1340 meteorology requirements. As a reminder, every weather program fulfills these requirements these days. But especially if you are brand new to meteorology and not really sure, this is a really nice list of the requirements that you have to get into the federal government meteorology series. And if you talk to non-scientists about this, they're usually pretty blown away about all the requirements, all the math, all the physics, and all the time spent in a lab, and all the requirements. If you want to learn more about that, I have a map up here of both undergraduate and graduate programs that offer meteorology or an atmospheric science degree. And I have my Bucky Badger up here because I went to the University of Wisconsin. Go Badgers. um, and so there aren't, not every school has a meteorology program or an atmospheric science program, but you can always get more information on those schools that do if you're interested in pursuing that. Okay, so now this is where it gets a little bit wild. So we're going to talk a little bit about my career path because it has definitely been a journey. As I said, I went to the University of Wisconsin. I got my Bachelor's of Science degree in Atmospheric and Oceanic Science. When I graduated from college, it was a pretty tough market to get into the National Weather Service. I always knew if I was going to go into meteorology that I wanted to work for the National Weather Service. So backtracking a little bit, when I had a weather radio, I would listen to it when we had bad weather. I had a map of Wisconsin. Again, I'm dating myself. This was before computers were everywhere. That I had all the counties highlighted and what the names were. So when the warning came across, I would know where it was in relation to where I was. I also think that most meteorologists also love maps, but that's another topic for another day. And I always knew that I wanted to work for those people that put out the warnings. So lo and behold, I was trying to get into a weather service after college. It took me a couple of years. I did kind of, just do the loaf around my college town for a little while. And then eventually found my way into an intern spot in Elko, Nevada, of all places. I'm sure people are like, Elko? How the heck did you end up in Elko, Nevada? Well, when I have an older brother who lives in Boise, Idaho. And when I went out to visit him, I went out to the weather office out there to visit, and there was a lead forecaster who was adamant, like, when you're done with college, just apply wherever you can. Like, go to Elko. They need people. Just get your foot in the door, and it's a great opportunity. And so I am forever grateful to that lead forecaster who really gave me that advice and helped me along my way. So I started my career in Elko. 9/11 was my first day in the Weather Service, actually. So I also unfortunately remember my anniversary of starting. I was there about a year, and then I decided it was time to move on to a general forecaster position, and I got hired as a general meteorologist in Glasgow, Montana. So I made another big leap to move way up into a rural community. I was there for almost 6 years. I had a wonderful boss when I worked up there. It was a great time. It was definitely isolated, but it was a great experience. So while I was in Glasgow, I learned about fire weather and about that as a career path. I didn't learn that in college. I didn't. What's fire weather? What's this about? So really got to learn about the intricacies and the importance of weather information for wildfires and about the small cadre of weather service employees who are specifically trained to go get deployed to wildfires, where you have to have, specific fire training, weather training, mountain meteorology, actual training on how to deploy a fire shelter because you get deployed to a fire camp just in case there's an emergency. So when I was in Glasgow, I got to have that opportunity of serving as an incident meteorologist, got called out to various wildfires. It still is like some of the hardest but most rewarding work I've ever done in my career of being ready at a moment's notice and getting called up to go to a wildfire in Washington State. Probably my first solo fire after I got certified training was in Washington State. I pulled up and it was just like news vans lined up because that day the fire took a big run and burned down 200 homes. So it was very high pressure, very intense, but also very rewarding. And the first connection for me that I really enjoyed the human side of weather. So I really liked and felt satisfaction knowing what was happening with my forecast, that I was issuing this forecast and people were using it and making decisions off of it. They were giving me that instant feedback if it was a good forecast or if it was a not so great forecast, and I was able to learn. But that human side it was impact decision support before we called it impact decision support services. So that was pretty early on in my career that I feel fortunate I was able to grasp onto that passion of mine. So after doing the incident meteorologist thing, and as a forecaster, I was able to move up as a lead forecaster in Glasgow. And then after doing that for a little while, I took my first jump into management, had an opportunity that came open to become a warning coordination meteorologist for the first time. This is my second time as a warning coordination meteorologist. I moved to Aberdeen, South Dakota, and got to continue my human connection side of working really closely with emergency managers on severe weather preparedness and just weather in general. It was a great experience. It was kind of nice to be back to the Midwest-ish as well, since I grew up in Wisconsin, a little bit closer to home. I was there for about 2 years, and then I made the leap to Kansas City. In 2009, I moved here to become the Aviation and Fire Weather Program Manager at Central Region headquarters. Again, we're in the same building, just I used to work over on the other side of the hall. Um, had a great experience doing that. It really was my first delve into really a lot of aviation weather besides just producing aviation forecasts in the forecast office. So, wonderful experience, great people, really enjoyed my position. While I was there, we were just spinning up the emergency response specialist meteorologist positions, and those were dedicated to working with the field and collecting data for larger scale type of events, working closely with our FEMA partners, our regional FEMA partners. So I was one of the able to take that leap and do that as for a couple of years, and again really connected with partners and getting to see how weather information was used by our end user, or they were able to take it and make decisions off of it, or we would write storm write-ups so that they could help cities and counties and states get money after disasters, so that when there was a disaster declaration, they were using our weather information to help that process. Then my career took a really, really unique turn as I had a baby in 2013. He's no longer a baby, he's 10. And I actually decided to leave the weather service completely so that I could stay home with my small one for a couple of years. It was a pretty tough decision at the time. I wasn't sure if I was going to come back to work or what was going to happen. I just knew at the time it was just something that I really felt that I needed to do for me and my family. I don't regret it for the world. I really, really value that time I was able to spend with him, especially without having any family nearby. It was the right decision at the right time. And then, if any of you have children, the age of 3 just about broke me. I'm just kidding. Three's kind of a rough age, but after a couple of years, and he was well on his way and started into preschool, I decided, you know what, I'm going to try to see if I can go back to work. So fortunately, I was able to. I returned to the National Weather Service as a meteorologist in charge at the Kansas City CWSU Center Weather Service Unit. Again, that's that unit that we have an air traffic control center here in the Kansas City metro area. So I was a meteorologist in charge of that weather unit embedded with our FAA partners. So again, following that theme of here I am again, providing weather information directly to my user, watching them make decisions, having to help provide that information of a manager breathing down your neck, what's going to happen with that thunderstorm? Is that gap going to close? Can I keep sending airplanes through there? I'm the person that really thrives off of that. I like the pressure, and I like having that interaction. So then I was able to jump back to Aviation Weather Center after a couple of years, and I've been here since 2021 as the warning coordination meteorologist. So I always like to just kind of remind people about, what there's all sorts of different inspiration and support and things that you can think about as you roll through your journey. Everybody's in a different place and everyone's going to have a different journey. And a lot of times there can be a lot of twists and turns that you have no idea. I mean, when I think about it, back to college, if you would have told me that I would be here right now with all the stuff that I've done, I would have laughed at you. I would have had no idea. So just be open to opportunities that come out there. My inspiration was really just from the Weather Service mission and the reputation. Like I said, I knew I wanted to work for that place that did the warnings. I really think that's what a lot of weather people have in common, is it really is about protecting lives and property and making sure that we are communicating that information out. As I referenced earlier, I really owe a lot to that lead forecaster in the Boise office that helped guide me and gave me some really good advice and helped me get my foot in the door. I've had a number of great supervisors, including my current supervisor, our deputy director, Deb Blondin. She's amazing. But I've also had some great supervisors throughout my career who have really helped guide me along my way. And then also I have what I call my trusted agent. So I really have that one person in my industry who I can have pretty honest and frank conversations with that can help guide me and tell me when I'm doing something silly or if I need to think about something differently. It's really important to have that type of person in your life. I think even in your personal life, but I'm using it in the professional life here. So as far as successes and failures, of which there will be much of both, I feel pretty fortunate when I look back and think that I was the first woman for a few of my meteorology positions, especially the intern in Elko. I think I was the first woman forecaster that came into that office, and that was in 2001. So again, that's not really all that long ago. I feel so lucky that I got to do the incident meteorologist gig for a while. One of the pictures of there, me in my Nomex, my yellow shirt and my green pants out on a fire. It was such a great experience. Again, working 15, 16-hour days for 2 weeks at a time is really, really tough and it really grinds on you, but it's so rewarding. I've been lucky to have some promotions into management. As I've gotten here to the Aviation Weather Center with our international work, I feel very fortunate that I've been able to get into some of these international committees with the World Meteorological Organization. Um, that's been a pretty cool, unique little thing. Again, looking back, I never would have thought I'd have an opportunity to do something like that. And then one of the other things, when I came back to the Weather Service, I vowed with the tough decision of deciding to step away from my career that I really want to try to help it make that better for other people facing that similar situation, whether it's not just about childcare and raising children, but other life situations. Um, you never know what life will throw at you. So trying to make it easier and trying to be a part of implementing a job share program in the weather service and trying to create some more work-life balance. So that was been something that's been pretty passionate about, and I'm so happy to see some of the changes that we've made as an agency. Of course, there will always be failures as well. There were many promotions I did not get, and it actually was pretty difficult to get back into the weather service after I left. It wasn't like I just put in for a job and I got it. There were a few failures before I got hired into the position that brought me back. Of course, there have been many busted forecasts, which are very humbling and always a learning experience. But I think it's really important to think of failures as growth opportunities. And I love the phrase brave, not perfect. So, just take the leap and you don't have to be great and perfect at everything. You'll figure it out. It'll be fine. So some things that I wish I knew about my career before I started college, definitely the shift work challenges. I think we all are aware that weather never takes a break, and so when you're doing it operationally, there's definitely some challenges, and be prepared for that. Um, I had no idea all the different meteorology options out there either. I think school is different now, where you get a little more exposure to that. But I had no idea about fire weather. I didn't know much about aviation weather, other than some airlines have meteorologists. But just explore and be curious. Get out there. There's so many different facets of meteorology. Definitely find a mentor. I've had a lot of great mentors and people in my life who have helped me along my journey, people that I could ask questions to or that would help guide me when I needed help. And as a mentor now myself, I feel pretty fortunate to do. I always learn so much from my mentee on the other end as well. But really just learn about yourself, what's important to you, what drives you, what you find interesting about weather, and everything else will be okay. It'll be fine. Opportunities will appear. Um, I always like to say, if you get an opportunity that really scares you, it's one you need to do, because that's how you really learn and grow, is from the scary stuff. Definitely keep an open mind. Be open to something that you would think that you would automatically say no to. Just, take a step back and say, do I really want to say no? Maybe I want to take a risk on that. It's all about relationships. Anybody that talks to me for more than 5 minutes will hear me say that. Life, career, everything is all about relationships. So make sure you are taking the time to develop them and to be curious about people and learn more about people. Really, just go for it. If something sounds interesting, try to find someone who can help guide you along the way, or just take the leap. And really, I think I will leave it at that, and I would love to know if anybody has any questions, comments, curiosities. What you got?
Thank you so much, Jennifer. That was a lot of awesome stuff, from what you do, from what the Aviation Weather Center does, to your personal journey. A lot of stuff that resonated with me that didn't expect to. I also, I think, attribute my path into weather to my 8th grade earth science
Oh
teacher, Miss
yeah.
Granich. I'll never forget Miss Granich. She's still teaching, I believe, a she's a very passionate earth scientist. Her husband actually is an oceanographer, so she was just
Oh,
all
that's
about it. When we
cool.
got to the weather section, that was just like my wheelhouse. So no, I'm with you there, and we use your website, by the way, in operations every single day. The that for our situational awareness. It's I know a few other folks at AWC, and when I tell them that, they're like, "Really?" I'm like, yeah, that's one of the best ones out there, in my opinion.
I've been getting some feedback from WFOs that they are using it as situational awareness. So I love that. I love
Yes.
hearing that.
So for the folks that are here, if you have any questions, either raise your hand or put them in the chat. We can. These are pretty informal. Usually, you do have the ability to unmute, but if you're a little shy, or you're not in a place where you can unmute, feel free to just drop a message in either the Q&A box, which I have pulled up here, or drop a note in the chat, and we can read it out loud and have a discussion. But while our folks are thinking for a moment, I have a couple of questions. So you
Yeah.
mentioned very quickly, kind of just you were talking about music. If you weren't in going to be a meteorologist, you would be a musician. I think if I wasn't a meteorologist, I would be a teacher. But regardless of that, it made me think about the importance in professionally of having hobbies outside of what you do for on the daily. And it's hard to do that as meteorologists or people who are surrounded in weather, because weather is always happening, and B, people find it so interesting that they ask you about it all the time. So first of all, what do you do to kind of disconnect from weather and disconnect from work altogether in that kind of difficult paradigm? And what is the importance of that step to take to just pull away from weather altogether for meteorologists?
Oh my gosh, that is a great, insightful question and something I'm really passionate about. Yeah. I've been in a while, so I get a lot of time off at this point and I use it. So I am one of those that I know what my use or lose is going to be, and I've made a vow a couple of years ago because it came close to not using it all, and I'm like, I am going to use my vacation time. So use your vacation time as your time. Get away, disconnect. When you go, just like shut it all off. I've even gotten the point where sometimes when I'm on vacation, people will ask me what I do, and sometimes I don't even want to tell people I'm a meteorologist because then it just makes more questions. They're like, "Oh, that's really interesting." And sometimes I'm just like, "Well, I'm an accountant," because then they don't ask any more questions. I don't mean an accountant bash. I don't know. That's not nice, but um, I also am an avid fitness junkie, so that is really something that's important to me. So I take my hour every day to go. That's how I shut off. I go work out and I get my time, clears my head. It's an hour to myself. At first, I felt really selfish for doing that, but I know that it just resets me. So it's really, really important. So just find that one thing, carve out, even if it's just 30 minutes, even just 30 minutes, something for yourself that you really enjoy, that's only for you, that's for no one else, and make it a priority because it's really important for you to energize yourself. And I think you need to do it on the daily. Take some time, kind of time every day, whether it is working out, whether it's reading, whether it's, meditating, just do something for yourself every day. Don't feel selfish about it. It's going to make you a better worker, a better parent, better, partner, better everything.
Yeah, can't agree more. Can't agree more. I'm glad our agency in particular, I know we're kind of weather service centric, at least the two of us, but is putting a lot of stock into that because it does go a long way into well-being.
Yeah.
Another question that I had, and we were just talking about our 8th grade teachers and the importance or the mark that they left on the career path that we chose. Um, the weather service, depending on availability and time and resources that they have, is also very invested in going into schools and giving presentations and trying to inspire the next round of scientists. And it doesn't necessarily even need to be meteorologists, but to stoke interest and curiosity in STEM. What First of all, not I know I don't want to color all WCMs in one light, but do you like doing that as well? What's your favorite part about doing that if you do? And what do you think the value is to not only our agency but to STEM in general and to the kids? What kind of value do you think that brings to see professionals in back into the classroom, kind of making those connections?
Yeah, I love doing it. Like I said, I have a 10-year-old. He's in fourth. Well, he's almost done a fourth grade. This is the last week of school. So every year when the teacher figures out that I'm a meteorologist, they get pretty excited. And I love going to talk to his class, and kids that age are just such a blast. Um, and we're in the process of working on some youth outreach, aviation specific for children as well. So if you ever do an event, please make sure you reach out to me because I will have some materials shortly. But I think it's really important to demonstrate all the different cool stuff you can do in STEM. I Again, I think it's a different world than it was when I was that age. That there was, you wouldn't really see a whole lot about it, but just being able to go out, or, actually talk to kids and show them the cool stuff that happens, that you just never know. You can just spark that one person and inspire them to decide to take that as a career. Yeah, it's very rewarding. It's a lot of fun. Well, and then I'm at the stage of my career too that when I first started, that I have had worked in offices where I've had students come in and shadow and learn about meteorology, and now they're in the weather service. So when I was WCM the first time, one of our emergency manager's daughter actually was really interested in weather, and I talked a lot with her, and she did some projects, and lo and behold, she went all the way up to get her graduate degree in meteorology. And yeah, so it's really cool when you see stuff like that.
That must be that must be so fulfilling and just
Yeah.
really cool to see. I love that. We do have a question from one of our guests here. So Adam, if you're able to, go ahead and unmute.
Hey, how's it going? Are you able to hear me?
Yep,
Yes,
hear
go
you loud
ahead.
and clear.
All right. Sorry, I have a almost 1 and almost 3-year-old in the background. So
Oh,
if
age
nothing else,
three.
I learned that my life is going to get crazier. So thank you for that. Um,
It'll be fine.
You didn't think you were
yeah,
going to get that at this webinar, did you?
yeah. So yeah, something that brought me into, or my interest in weather, was kind of being outside. I feel like, and a lot of meteorology has obviously we're sitting behind computers all day. Um, so that's what really interests me in IDSS and incident weather. Sorry, I should introduce. I just got a job started about a month ago as a forecaster at the CWSU in Memphis.
Oh,
Um,
congratulations. That's where I've seen your
thank,
name before. I was like, that name looks
thank
familiar.
you.
Okay.
Yeah. So I really like working with those guys, everyone at the ATCC there, and or ARTCC there, and but so they want to know the information, quick. I'm used to telling like a weather story, from start to finish, and working top down when I'm talking about the weather. But with those decision makers, they want to know kind of just the impacts only. So in your career, how have you balanced that, trying to tell a weather story versus getting the information out quick and to the point, so they're all listening and getting the message?
Yeah, that's a great question too. I just really understanding your audience, I think, is really important. And that's an important audience to understand. Yeah, there's the right time for the why, and there's the right time to just leave out the why and just tell the what. And especially with people without a deep science meteorology background, a lot of times it's just the what. Yeah, they don't need the why.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think what I'm trying to do is talk to everybody and just really get to know what they need to know from me. Has been a big
Yes,
part of
yeah.
the
Yeah, and
job. So
even in the center, there'll be different needs. So you know, I shouldn't say just a, but like the day-to-day air traffic controller is going to have a different level of interest and knowledge than the traffic management unit, where they have to have a little more in-depth knowledge. So it really is getting to know your audience and who needs what, and understanding what those needs are and what the impacts are. You'll get it.
yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks for the question, Adam. Yeah, I mean that goes for anywhere in operational meteorology. Knowing who you're talking to is so important. That's why you gotta interact with them. And
Yeah.
I struggle about being behind a desk too when it's a beautiful day out. There's a part of our office that has no windows whatsoever, and I didn't even know it was sunny out one time, and that's kind of
Yeah,
ironic.
you
And
can
maybe
probably tell from this setup that I don't know. There's not a window in here, so I have no idea what's going on today.
yeah. I have one more question, and I'll let our guests kind of ruminate if they have anything else they want to ask or discuss. It doesn't have to be a question; it just could be a topic to throw and in for discussion. So if you don't have a question, that's okay too. Um, you mentioned the importance of a mentor, but I feel like it might be a little maybe not cumbersome, but difficult to find a mentor or ask somebody that you really respect to be your mentor or to have that relationship. Do you have any tips or practices that you found helpful when you tried to develop that relationship?
Yeah, so again, weather service centric. Sorry, we do have some formal mentoring opportunities. The NWS mentoring program is something that you can apply for and get linked up with someone through that process. But personally, some of my best mentoring experiences have been informally outside of that process. Just, getting to know someone and thinking, well, I want to learn more about that. And especially if you phrase it as, I'm really curious about this and I want to learn more about it. I think most people I know, especially at the stage that I'm in my career, that are at the similar stage, are going to be more than happy to show you the ropes, if you will, or help you out or give you their perspective. I know, at least personally, at this stage of my career, I'm more interested in helping others get to where they want to go and to help them figure out where they fit into the agency or where they fit into meteorology in general and what's going to make someone thrive. And I think most people in the weather service are in that vein as well. Again, it just goes back to just go for it, just ask to, and don't be afraid of a no. And if somebody says no, you go find someone else. It's okay. Um, You'll eventually, find someone who can give you some solid advice. I also encourage you to find someone who you would think is going to give you a different perspective than what you already have. So do go out of your way to find someone who is maybe doing something really different than you would do or that you want to do, because you can learn a lot from differences.
Some really great tips. Um, Something else that I was thinking about, and you were talking about fire weather not being something that's taught in classes. I'm a fire weather focal point, and I did my thesis in that, but I did not know about it before that. I kind of just fell into it and I'm like, oh, this is really cool. But
Mhm.
there are, I also think in a similar vein, but maybe not as obscure. Maybe not now anymore as much anymore is aviation. We were having a discussion before this started about getting the word out about aviation weather and the importance of it, the value of it. You kind of hit on that really well in your presentation. If somebody is interested in aviation weather during school, like before they go into the professional field, what are some things they can do while they're in their university or whatever it is to develop those skills or um, maybe expand or hone in their interest on aviation weather a little bit more. Like if it interests them, what kind of steps can they take to make themselves the best kind of candidate when they go out into the job market?
Yeah, that's a great question. Send me an email. I'd be happy to talk to you. And I find that when I go to conferences now, AMS, NWA, I do run into students who are really interested in specifically aviation meteorology, and I think that's really, really cool. So there are opportunities, and I would say there are a lot of even research opportunities to get involved in the aviation side. So feel free to reach out to us, and if we don't have the answer, there's a lot out there. It can link you up with different airlines to get that perspective. I know people that would be more than happy to talk to all the different career options that are out there. And I think certain schools do have a little more emphasis if they have aviation programs or and specific heavy aviation program, not just weather, but if they also have aviation, that there's those opportunities for those schools that are linked together like that to learn more specifically about aviation weather. Yeah, great question.
Sure thing. All right. I've run out of my questions. I had several, but I run out of them. Do any of our other guests or folks who are on the call here have any questions for Jennifer before we close things out? Adam, go for it.
Yeah, I was gonna have one more. So a lot of our job obviously is forecasting, and then after you're done forecasting, there's another forecast. So what do you do to, I guess, look back and grade your forecast to see if it was good and to learn from it?
Oh gosh, I have to go back to my Wayback Machine. Yeah, I think it's just when I was at the center, it was just more of talking to the people that I was working with the day before, be like, how'd that pan out? Anything, did I leave you a good forecast or did it all fall apart? Or, but that, that's a little different environment when there's only 4 of you total and you're, as far as meteorologists, and you sort of are in tune with what's happening. So, I personally have found the most value in getting the direct user feedback to understand how I'm doing, versus doing an analysis of, comparing observations to observations to models. And I'm more interested in, even if I don't know if you've had this happen yet, but you probably will. At some point, you will turn over what is considered a perfect forecast, and things will still go wrong. So I'm the type of person that also wants that feedback so I can understand, okay, so what happened here? Did I not communicate correctly? Did I need to communicate that more clearly? There still was a decision made here somewhere, even though they had all the information. So what happened? How do I make that next step to make sure that doesn't happen again? Yeah. So for me, it's more the people part and the interaction of the, I'm less concerned if I was right or wrong. I'm more concerned about whether the right decision was made or not. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Great question. Thank you, Adam. All right. Hearing none others, I want to, or no others, I want to thank Jennifer again for a great presentation and discussion. Very wide range of topics discussed, which is what we aim for here for our BOGM webinars. We're hoping to have one in June. We have not scheduled one quite yet, but keep an eye on our social media accounts for this webinar, for the June webinar and webinars throughout 2024. And if you have any suggestions for topics or speakers that you want to see on these webinars, whether it's yourself or somebody you know or somebody that you heard in another webinar, please reach out to us via social media or through our email address, which is found on the AMS website. And we'd be more than happy to reach out and see if we could make something work. But that'll do it again. Jennifer, thank you so much for taking time out of your Monday to join us and talk about not only what you do, but your unique experience through operational meteorology. And to all of you, have a great rest of your day. And we'll see you again in another BOGM webinar.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.